Welcome to Pushing 40-Bit. We're the podcast that's like a book club, but for video games. I'm Frosty, here with Cynic, Placebo.
I am actually Cynic, with short hair now.
I was about to say, who's our new guest?
I forgot to set that up.
No, it's fine.
It's all right. And I'm Klipper.
And this is Klipper.
That's right.
This month we played BioShock Infinite. This was released in 2013, so semi-recently. Created by Irrational Games, correct?
Yep.
And then published by 2K. Irrational had been a bunch of different people. Cynic knows all the timeline.
Well, I forgot the latest one. Clipper will have to tell me, but it's Blue Sky Productions, then Looking Glass Technologies, then Looking Glass Studios, then finally Irrational Games, and now Ghost something?
Ghost Story Games.
Ghost Story Games. There you go.
And they're working on some new project, and they've
changed names again?
Probably.
Okay.
Interesting. So, BioShock Infinite is the third game in the BioShock series. Did we ever figure out if System Shock is part of it?
So it's debatable. So it's the same team that made System Shock 1 and 2, albeit in two different production company names.
Okay.
It borrows heavily from thematic elements in those games, and so many people theorize that it's the same universe, but I couldn't find anywhere where they confirm that it's the same universe.
And most people just call it a spiritual successor to System Shock.
Okay.
Which I'm okay with. It makes sense.
Yeah. It's not like, Commander Keen and the Doom guy and BJ Blazkowicz all being,
That's so
inbred.
strange.
Which is basically like J.K. Rowling in the Harry Potter universe. It's like, oh, by the way, this is like this too. It's like, okay, just stop.
After the fact. And
Yeah, exactly.
And they probably all descended from Luke Skywalker.
Of course.
So,
Yeah, okay.
Which is Ray's dad. Anyway.
Spoilers. There's something else I was going to say and I forgot. Just that this is the third in the BioShock series. I had only ever played BioShock 1, never played the second.
I played pieces of BioShock 1, no BioShock 2, and then this I played like 3 times.
I played all of them. I love the BioShock series.
Okay. So
I haven't played the System Shocks, though. So I
I've never played those.
Though I did play Ultima Underworld, which they made as well, and they also made Thief, and I played that one.
Thief was fun.
Yeah.
That was kind of a fun game with new elements that I've never seen.
Yeah.
Like the old, they were kind of like the real first-person sneaker, I guess you could say. Where you could shoot moss on the floor and make your footsteps quieter and stuff.
Yep.
But we're not talking about Thief.
But I think it shows, like, their anthology of games shows that they were a creative, scrappy studio, right? Like, BioShock 1 they made on a shoestring budget. I don't know what sort of budget they had for the previous games, presumably even more shoestring. But it shows that they were focused on plot, they were focused on new mechanics, they were focused on trying to stand out in ways other than just pouring graphics in because they didn't have money. Whereas with BioShock Infinite, they finally had some money to throw around.
Right. And I love a good story-driven game. That's I'll always go back to that, is the better the story, the better the game. I'll deal with some clunkiness, even though that's my Achilles heel. As long as the story is fantastic. If the story is fantastic, I'll look past quite a bit, and you'll probably see that today.
Yeah, this, I was trying, well, I don't know if I want to say this yet. The story in this is great. Let's say that.
Yeah. And right off the bat, we should say this is going to be a spoiler-heavy episode.
Yeah.
So if you haven't played the game, you don't want it spoiled, do not watch this episode at all. Start to finish, just turn it off.
And stop, like right now. We'll give you a second.
Your view count has been counted. That's all we need you for.
Yeah. Go ahead and leave that thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about some things before the story, before we dive into the story. Just interesting little tidbits, right? So, for example, while this one isn't, the same as BioShock 1 and 2, obviously it is in the same universe. We'll get into the obviously part later. And those ones were heavily influenced by 1984. The movie Logan's Run, surprisingly enough. And Atlas Shrugged and Fountainhead, those are both by Ayn Rand. So the development team is very interested in those works, and so they were super focused on it. And then the other interesting piece was that this game has some specific ties into a fellow named Bryce DeWitt, who coined the term many worlds interpretation in the 60s. He didn't come up with the theory, but he did tweak it a little bit. But it's basically the quantum mechanics theory that each decision in life, both paths are taken simultaneous, kind of a Schrodinger's cat thing. Since both paths are taken, both universes exist where you said yes, where you said no, where you refused to say anything, and things branch off from there. So the many worlds interpretation is definitely heavily featured in this game.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And his last name was DeWitt, which is why.
And Bryce DeWitt specifically.
Okay, so the main character in this, named Booker DeWitt, is obviously a reference to that.
Yep.
Got it.
Definitely.
Pure coincidence.
Yep. No. Yeah. Okay. So I'm happy to dive into it whenever we are. I just wanted to get those little tidbits of Easter eggs.
Okay, so Rob or Cynic, why don't you go ahead and give us the let's say we've finished the game, which we all have. Give us the timeline of events.
Yeah,
that's probably the best place to start, and you did the best job, kind of.
Yeah, I had to diagram it because it's really confusing.
I imagine you in your basement with like all the little red string lines, like all the pictures. Be like, now.
No, but I did use 3 colors of pen. So
3 colors.
Blue, black, and red.
Wow,
all the important ones. So basically, there's 2 periods of time that we're going to talk about. There's going to be before the game starts, which you learn about in flashbacks and audio diaries, things like that. And then there's after the game starts. So before the game starts, there's a guy named Booker DeWitt. He's a soldier. He takes part in a massacre at a place called Wounded Knee, which is a real battle. It happened in December 1890. He feels horrible about this, and then he finds a preacher who offers him baptism. So this is where the Many Worlds interpretation comes in, and then we split. So there's a fellow that chooses baptism. So Booker DeWitt chooses baptism, and as he emerges, he decides that he's going to throw off his past life, and he renames himself Zachary Comstock. So that's timeline 1. And then you have a separate timeline where Booker DeWitt, he's about to go through the baptism, and he says, no, screw that. That's not going to absolve me of my sins, and he just gets out of there. So that Booker, in timeline 2, he gets married, has a kid. His wife dies in childbirth. He, becomes a drunk that's super depressed, and eventually sells his daughter to pay off all his gambling debts. So that's his timeline. Whereas in Zachary Comstock's timeline, he becomes super successful. He's got connections with Congress. He meets a brilliant scientist named Rosalind Lutece, who has all these cool things with quantum mechanics she can do, including levitation. And so he convinces Congress to fund a city that floats, which is called Columbia, which is where all of this takes place.
Which is that, about that point is where alternate history stuff comes into play. I would say everything up until then
is pretty
close to what is true.
Yeah, correct.
And the city of Columbia was launched as a World's Fair project, and then they basically said, okay, now this will be a fully functioning city in the sky.
Yep. So that all happens, before the game starts, and then Zachary Comstock, he wants an heir to run the city. He's sterile, he can't get an heir, but luckily he knows a scientist who can go into all sorts of different worlds. He's convinced it has to be a blood heir, or otherwise the city's going to fail. So he goes into Booker's timeline, he buys his daughter, and he takes his daughter back to Columbia. Small little piece that will be important is that her pinky gets severed in that as they pull the baby through the time to the other timeline. She doesn't make it all the way through, and her pinky gets left behind in Booker DeWitt's timeline.
Which presumably is how she gets her powers. She's the only person that's been stuck in between 2 timelines.
Yeah. So Booker then goes even more depressed. He carves AD into his hand for his daughter's name, Anna DeWitt. He's just horribly depressed, doesn't do anything, becomes a total slob. Whereas Zachary Comstock is convinced that this baby is going to be the future of the city, locks her in a tower, raises her to be the next prophet. And then Booker gets approached by a guy called Robert Lutece that had bought the baby, but he gets confused at this point, which maybe we'll talk about a little bit later. But anyway, he gets a chance to go and get Anna back. So he follows Robert Lutece and Robert's sister, Rosalind Lutece, back into Zachary Comstock's timeline to get his daughter. But as the game starts, you don't know that that's what's happening, because when you go through worlds and tears, your memory gets kind of fuzzy. And so when you start the game, all you know is that there's a girl that you're supposed to go get in a tower. Yeah. And you don't really know why.
That's literally all you know. You've got a box with a pistol in it, the code to get up into Columbia, and a picture of Elizabeth. And that's all you have to go on.
Well, I was going to ask too, so is this is in the future of this Booker's timeline, right? Because Zachary Comstock is an old man. And Booker is still young?
No, these timelines are actually in lockstep. Booker's not young, he's just... So he would presumably be like 50 or something like that, right? He was a soldier, he gets married, has a kid, and then 20 years pass before he gets to go try to rescue Elizabeth. Zachary Comstock, this whole time, has been a successful businessman, heavily working with Rosalind Lutece, and for whatever reason, his exposure to their invention of interdimensional stuff has aged him and given him cancer at the same time, and made him sterile. All those things happened. So he looks really old, but he's also like 50.
Okay, I didn't catch that, so that's okay.
And in 1912 is when the game actually starts, because it says 1912, coast of Maine.
Yep. And then, do we want to do the second half later, or do we want to talk about that at a different point? Because I have the timeline for the second half, but basically at this point we've started the game.
Yeah, let's just go from here. Okay, we started the game. Right?
Sounds good.
So you're in the rowboat. They And the first time you play it, you don't realize how many small, subtle hints they're giving you.
Oh, yeah.
Because it makes no sense.
You know it's weird.
Yeah.
You know it's hinting something.
You got these two people talking. He's like, well, he never helps Ro. And you're like, what do you mean I never help Ro? I've never been in this thing.
Yeah, I was really confused both because I played this with you guys looking over my shoulder, which that video has been released. And I didn't catch up on a lot of stuff, both because I was having trouble hearing what was actually going on, and then also just because it is confusing by its nature.
And as we're sniggering in the corner, I'm sure.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of stuff during that first hour that you guys were like looking at each other, glancing at each other, that I totally did not pick up on until after I had played and then went back and rewatched the video. I was like, oh, that's why those people in the telescope thing like disappear, because they're the ones that are, time traveling and stuff. Totally did not pick up on that.
Now, one important thing, well, I don't know, I'm jumping too far ahead. I want to keep this at least somewhat linear to try to not confuse people. So maybe I'll talk about that later. Sorry.
So you go to a lighthouse. You've got the probably easiest puzzle in gaming history, where it's like there's like 3 different things you have to hit, which are the symbols of Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, and Thomas Jefferson, right? Yep. You have to hit them in a certain order, which they kind of throw you a slow pitch. They bring up the cards so you can watch it. I remembered what it was.
Yeah. I didn't. I was worried I was going to have to. And
I even thought it was going to be like, a CODIS where you can't just have the pictogram. You have to remember that those words correlate to, gladium, clavum, and volum, and right? But no, it's they give it to you.
It's a slow pitch. It really is. And then I love the scene as you go up and there's like someone dead. Is that you? Is that person who's dead in that very first room? Is that Booker DeWitt?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought it was, because I was like, this. We've obviously
it could be.
And as the game progresses, you'll find out that this experiment has been attempted a few times, right? And so I always assumed that was me there, but he never lifts up the face, he never looks at it, but he just kind of goes on.
It could also be an artifact from previous development, right? So initially the developers had planned to start a big gunfight right off the bat in the lighthouse. And so you had to battle your way up to then to get to the top of the lighthouse. Whereas they decided to scrap that because they're like, no, we want to hurry and get to Columbia. We don't want to, sidetrack people with this thing that happens first.
Which is interesting because the first 30 minutes or so, there's no combat. Like it's
exposition.
You're just
a
going
movie.
through.
Which I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a game leading me on with a little movie, and then getting into the action, and then going from there. I don't like when it goes movie action. I kind of want to get that out of the way, the exposition out of the way, and then now I'm playing.
Yeah, as long as there's interesting things going on, which in this there is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is where I feel like Assassin's Creed Unity went super wrong. They interlaced it, and then at the same time they were doing tutorial. But because there's a movie and then teeny bits of tutorial, by the time you're done with the tutorial, you can't remember any of it because you're like, I was busy watching the show, right? Like it took 3 hours to get through it. I don't know, maybe felt long.
And you get in there, you go to the top. There's obviously some very creepy stuff in that lighthouse. I love when you actually get into the chair, which there's just this random chair comes out of the ground. And you're like, well, I guess I better sit in this chair.
There's a lot of that going on throughout this game.
Yeah, it's like, well, I guess I'll sit here.
There's a weird drink. I guess I'll drink this.
Right. Well, and that's kind of meta too, right? Because they're talking about essentially, fatalism and determinism across universes, and you can sit there as long as you want, but you're gonna eventually sit in the chair because you have no other choice, right? And so that's kind of a breaking of the fourth wall to show you, you are in a deterministic universe where you're gonna do what we the developers have said.
Did anyone try to wait out a decision? Yeah. Nothing happens.
Yeah.
You'll wait there all day long.
Oh yeah.
Including overnight, I tested the theory.
Oh wow!
At the heads and tails, so I'm jumping ahead a little bit. There's a scene where Robert and Rosalind both.
The lettuce twins.
Lettuce twins. Let's go with the lettuce twins.
I call them the Lutesses.
They ask you to flip a coin. I'm like, I'm not going to flip it. I'm going to sit here. I went to bed. I went to sleep. I woke up.
Wow!
I was still just sitting there waiting for them.
I was curious. I waited probably 3 or 4 minutes, but then my willpower broke.
I never waited. I just went along with it.
And maybe something happened while I was asleep, and I don't know. And it was just there. I don't know.
Creepy.
I don't think it's that deep. I mean, as much as I love this game, it's fairly linear from start to finish. There's a little bit of branching you can do, but it's pretty linear, right? And they show you that, again, from the very beginning. Straight up the tower, hop in the chair, and then you get rocketed into a cinematic that's going to last, 20, 30 minutes, right?
Which I love the term they use, ascending, or ascension.
Yeah.
As you're saying, we're ascending to Columbia.
And then when you get to the right height, hallelujah.
Yeah, hallelujah. I thought that was just beautiful. That was a nice little touch right there. Which, you can see how self-important these people think they are.
Oh, yeah.
They think so highly of themselves. And Booker's just going, what is this place? This place is just off, right? And you land, and the first thing you do is you go into this weird cathedral that's flooded, which I thought the water flooding all over is kind of interesting. Was that a throwback to BioShock?
I think it was.
You guys went to that, but yeah.
But I think it also is showing that, this is a better city than BioShock. Because BioShock water was leaking in because things were degrading. This was showing the mastery of that they have over all things, including water, right? Because notoriously water in buildings, it's really hard to deal with water features and not have things degrade.
Especially if this building is floating in the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you loot everyone blind in this church item because there's
trash cans.
There's trash cans and there's there's offerings to people. And
not always empty. I got lots of stuff out of trash cans. I
So,
found lots of apples and bananas.
But I love the whole scene where you're walking through this weird flooded church, and you get down, and then you're all kind of walking towards this group of people. Like, I just thought that was so cinematic and so, I don't say beautiful, but like, you're like, these people are bought in. These people are 100% into whatever this cult, this religion, this whatever it may be. They're all in.
Yeah. Well, and you have to be. You're literally not allowed in until you've baptized in, this cult, right? And that's the gateway to enter the city. If not, you've got to go back home somehow, right?
Which they never really explored.
That would have been. They'd probably just kill you.
And I love the baptism scene where it's like, this one doesn't seem clean to me. And he does it again. I'm like, ow.
I wonder if that's, though, something they do to everybody, right? Because as you get through, so you nearly drown, you wake up on the other side, you see, statues of the Founding Fathers with their symbols. And then one of the very first people says, the prophet fills our lungs with water so that we may better appreciate the air, right? And
I didn't catch that.
Makes you wonder if, this is a lesson they teach you when you get to Columbia, right? I don't know.
All Columbia newcomers.
We could kill you. Be grateful for everything.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So you come through there, and then you get your first, once the doors open, you see your first real good look at Columbia. You see it in the elevator a little bit, or a sensor unit. But you get that very huge, and just the scale of it. And I thought it was a powerful, just a powerful moment in the game. And it's one of those games I mentioned previously in previous podcasts that I love these big cinematic moments and these big memories that stick with you. That one does stick with me. Just that first, I'm in Columbia.
The reveal of the city.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Stark contrast from BioShock 1, which is dark and grimy and gloomy. This is beautiful and bright.
That's a lot of why I didn't care for BioShock 1. It's very claustrophobic. I found it really ugly, depressing. And this is not that at all. It's a lot more open, beautiful, bright colors. I love the aesthetic of this game so much more.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's great.
Though I think in some ways they're setting you up to be a little bit disappointed later, right? Because first of all, it does get into a little bit more of the dingy areas, right?
Sure.
Things do degrade in look.
Yeah.
But then the bigger piece is that this opening plaza with the big reveal is full of people, full of life, full of conversations and NPCs everywhere, right? Now, first of all, you can't interact with them a ton, which I think is a slight negative. But again, that too would set you up for failure later because the NPCs kind of disappear. There's not many of them for most parts of the game.
Right. And a lot of it is cities on fire or thing. There's big battles going on, and so you wouldn't want.
And they're
if
staged,
you're a civilian,
right?
You're going to go hide in your house.
Even later on, when you do see people in the cities on fire, they're staged for a certain thing. They're not going to change what they're doing based on you. There are a few pockets of people that will interact and do things depending on what you do, but they're rare.
Yeah.
And I also love the what they're showing is you've got this big, beautiful city, and it's impressive and it's powerful and it's gorgeous, but underneath the pretty surface, there's some pretty dirty, disgusting secrets about the city and the people who live there.
Yeah,
yeah.
Racism abounds in this city.
It gets into that pretty quick.
Pretty quick, right? And this is 1912, so it's a product of the times. We're in a different time now from when we were there. But I love the stark contrast of how beautiful the city is, yet how ugly the people are.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that plays a role through the whole game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even, it's an interesting twist. This is later on, but when the Vox Populi turns on you, now they're like the bad guys also, and it's just everyone here is not great.
Though it also made it easier, because did you ever damage an ally and suddenly they're mad at you now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when everybody's bad, there are no allies to worry about damaging. I can just do whatever I want.
It's just you.
Mass murder.
Yeah.
So we continue the exposition. One more scene I want to mention from the start is that I love the carnival area and the fair. Where you're playing the little games where you learn about the vigors a little bit and you practice shooting a little bit, which are these subtle ways to teach you tutorial of the game, but it's a fun way to do it, not just a tooltip that says, press X to duck or whatever.
I also think there's an interesting point there that I think a lot of people miss. So I've heard some people critique BioShock Infinite because they're like, in this utopia, you don't need these vigors, right? Whereas in Rapture, it was this horrible place where you were just willing to do drugs, you were willing to do whatever to make your life better. And so the plasmids were there to make your life better. And that's why the splicers just like went crazy with them, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas in Colombia, it's a utopia. You don't need that. Why would they want that? But there's a big fair where they're advertising these things at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And later you'll find a voxophone that shows you that Jeremiah Fink, at some point, we don't know exactly when, worked with across a tear, across an interdimensional thing with people in Rapture to figure out, oh, you've got plasmids, we're going to take that technology and we're going to make the same thing here. And so my theory is that these are brand new. And Fink is trying to sell them for the first time ever. We don't know how it'll go, right? Maybe people buy them, maybe people won't, but that's why there's a big fair where they're showing them all.
And it's another
that could be, yeah.
Another insight into the haves versus have-nots of Colombia. Mm-hmm. Like those with, it's like they say a life with vigor
is a life that's bigger.
Is a life that's bigger, right? And it's just another, hey, let's just draw this bigger division between, the Vox Populi and the regular folk versus the Patriots or the Colombians or whatever they say.
The founders.
The founders, yeah. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
Soon after that scene, there's obviously the famous scene of BioShock Infinite where the actual gameplay and the gunplay begins of it. Was that shocking to you playing for the first time, or?
I knew something like that was coming because I've heard people talk about it. Mm-hmm. I guess because it's so infamous. So I didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but I knew there's some big racist thing at the beginning of this game.
It shocked me when I played the first time. I had no idea there was going to be, like a racist couple that you're essentially going to stone with baseballs, right?
Like,
yeah. That's barbaric and shocking, right? I also didn't realize until this playthrough that the guy running that, the guy that's like being the master of ceremonies is Jeremiah Fink, the giant businessman, right? Like,
I didn't catch that. No.
I didn't catch that either. I played this game several times.
Yeah, wow. So that's Jeremiah Fink that's running. He's the master of ceremonies there, right? That catches you as you're about to throw the ball. You guys at him and me at the couple because I was curious what would happen, right? So I was like, let's see what happens. And the exact same animation. They catch your hand. They notice that there's AD on it, which for some reason they know that you're the false shepherd because the prophet has seen that there will be a guy with AD on his hand,
and he knows that's him.
Yeah.
So once the actual gunplay begins, let's talk about the gunplay. How did you feel the gunplay ran? Like how was the vigors versus the firearms versus the actual action of the game? How did that jive for you?
Well,
no, let's hear it.
This is the negative of the game, I think. Okay. I did not care for the gunplay. It started off okay, but pretty quick it gets tedious. It never felt too difficult. Mm-hmm. Mostly, like, I don't know. It was just tedious and boring and never super interesting, I found. And I wanted there to be a stealth mechanic. I think that would have made things a bit better. Either both having the ability to, take people out stealthily or just bypass, large sections of enemies. And that never was there. I don't know. I didn't care for it, and that's a big part of the game.
Mm-hmm. It's the majority of the game,
yeah.
Really.
So it was
agree,
frustrating.
That's a word. And I mean, looking into it, the developers essentially, when they advertised it initially, there was going to be a stealth mechanic. That was something that was advertised, and it just got cut.
When I got the crow vigor, I was like, oh, this is going to be invisibility because the first crow guy that attacks you can go invisible, and I was like, oh, here it is. Here's invisibility. It wasn't it.
That's it. Crow vigor was my favorite vigor.
Oh, really?
That's what I used all the time.
I used it a lot, but I mostly did Bucking Bronco.
I don't think I used Bucking Bronco even a single time.
Oh, I liked it a lot.
It made all the enemies vulnerable.
Yeah,
they couldn't fight you. You had to pop them up in the air and shot them.
Yeah, but the crows not only did the same thing, right? So you shoot a crow at anybody, and they just sit there and swat at the crows for forever, and you can just take pot shots at them until they're dead.
Yeah.
And then their body turns into a crow trap that everybody else catches crows.
If you upgrade it.
Oh, yeah. I upgraded crows.
Because that's what you're using.
That was my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually the biggest, and I've read complaints about BioShock Infinite. That's probably the biggest one people say is the mechanics are it's just another shooter.
Yeah.
It's just a straightforward action shooter, which if you watch the initial developer commentary and Ken Levine explains the game for the first time, you were supposed to combine your powers with Elizabeth's to make the combat more enhanced and do even more powerful things. But that got caught in lieu of just she can open tears to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's what got cut. It was supposed to be the point where you would use one of your vigors to supercharge an element. She'd pick it up and throw it.
Yeah.
You know, it was supposed to be playing off each other's powers.
And she'd bring in like clouds that were going to like electrocute people, and right, these are all things that were demoed as proof of concepts, right?
Yeah.
Just smoke and mirrors, not real demos, but they got cut.
It got cut.
Oh, interesting.
And I wonder if part of it was for budgetary or financial reasons, or part of it was like, hey, we need this to appeal more to the masses. That's why the cover art changed.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. There was a strong fear that having a woman that much at the center of gameplay could ruin sales, right? Which obviously wasn't true. They sold 3.7 million in the first 2 months, sold 11 million copies overall. But you'll notice that the cover here is Booker DeWitt. If you saw that cover on the shelf, you'd have no idea that it was about anything that BioShock is. Whereas just this slight change, and they included this on the inside sleeve, but you can see now in the foreground is Elizabeth. Right, and in the background is Booker DeWitt, and they had strong conversations about that. And eventually, whoever thought that it was going to be a detriment won, and that's what the cover became.
Which is interesting because she is the star of the show.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure.
She's awesome.
And just while we talk about Elizabeth, I think this is by far the most fleshed out NPC I've ever seen in a game.
Yeah,
she has a personality. She has like morals and ethics that like you can count on. They don't change like. They do a little bit,
but a story arc, not flippant change.
So let's just talk about the Tomb Raider reboot that was recent, right? The 20, I can't remember what year it was, but it was within the past 5 years,
something like that. Yeah.
Lara Croft is in a situation where she gets attacked and she fights off her attacker and she kills him eventually, and she kind of freaks out about it for about 12 seconds. And then suddenly she is a murderous person.
Oh yeah.
It just suddenly, and it's just such a light switch changes on her,
Yeah.
Every time you do a finishing move with your skyhook, Elizabeth still squirms about it.
Really?
She'll go, ugh, or yuck, or you can hear her
squirm
about it.
I noticed that a few times. Not every time, but often.
So she's consistent. And now she does freak out at the part where she says, hey, you killed those people. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, and I'm going to have to do some more and do some other horrible things. She still hates it. Yeah. She hates the idea. She hates that you're doing it. But she realizes that's her ticket out of this place. So, you got to kind of go.
She's reluctant to go along with it, but she does. Yeah. Even though she does run away from you a few times here and there throughout the game, but she, always comes back and I guess is willing to go along with it.
I mean, if you're going to get mad at somebody for killing people, really you're going to get mad at me killing the person that stabbed me through the hand, right? Like, put a knife all the way through my hand. That seems a little hypocritical.
Yeah.
I definitely appreciate it, like, when it pops up and says, you do not need to protect Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Like, yes.
Yeah.
Like, this is not an escort mission.
Please do not be an escort mission for 10 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Though it does kind of ruin the realism of her character, right? Because she'll, like, just duck behind something and they ignore her, right?
But I'm totally fine with that for gameplay
it's worth the trade-off because,
sure.
escort missions are awful.
Yeah.
And it could be argued that, if someone shot at her, she'd just open a tear and just deflect the bullet or something. It could be argued.
Maybe, but at least early on, her tear ability is very limited.
Sure, yes, right? Yeah. She gets better as it goes on.
Yeah.
But I love, she was so well fleshed out. The voice acting was phenomenal. The motion capture was phenomenal. She felt like a living, breathing person. And someone worthy of protecting. And even though in the story you're just trying to pay off a debt, I found myself as the player being worried about her and caring for her and being like, I need to protect her and not let her see Paris or get away from this horrible situation, right?
So on the voice acting, part of the reason it was so good was that she's a method actor and they did horrible things to her, right?
Serious?
Basically she would say, you need to yell at me and berate me and call me terrible things, and then they get her crying and then she'd record, right? Like to do things where you're going to cry, right? And so she very much wanted to be in whatever mood she was in. And I mean, it shows. I think her voice acting is much better than Booker's voice acting, right? It's perfectly fine, but it's not, exceptional, right? It's not Voss from Far Cry 3, right?
Right.
Whereas hers is approaching that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd say Voss from Far Cry 3 is the only other one other than PC, I can compare this level of realism to.
Yeah. But you also, Voss, you get a tiny slice of him, whereas Elizabeth, you see her for the duration of the game, basically, right? And so I think it would have been harder for Voss to have maintained that level of excellence throughout a large story.
And so the gameplay, you thought that's where that was the most lacking. And admittedly, on my next playthrough, I'm starting to agree a little bit.
There are definitely some really good moments that even though, the overall, I felt frustrated, there were times where I was like, okay, this part of it is fun, and I like this. The first time you come to a kind of a more open section where it's got, the sky rails running around and Elizabeth can summon things in, and there's, a bunch of basically just choices of how you want to deal with the enemies.
Yeah.
Like the first time they do that, that's great. But then by the third or fourth time you're seeing that same kind of area, I was kind of like, I just want to move on and see what happens next in the story. Like I want to be done fighting these people.
And this released simultaneously on PC and consoles. The first time I played it was this guy right here. I played it on the Xbox 360. And those skyhook fights are horrible. They are nearly impossible to do, right? Because it doesn't matter what direction you're facing. When you hop on a skyhook, it faces you forward, right? And so then you have to reface and aim, and it's constantly pushing you around. You go around a bend, and it like redirects your camera. It was so hard to aim. Whereas now, when I had a mouse and a keyboard, I was like, oh my gosh, this game is 10 times better. Because I can literally run and loop around on skyhooks and fight effectively.
Yeah.
And
that's interesting, yeah. Because I wouldn't have guessed that. Because that plays such a big part in the entire game.
Yeah.
All those skyhooks.
And even just, I mean, as is common with consoles, it helps you aim a little bit, right? But that also means that it's harder to hit like the firemen's backpacks. It's harder to hit the patriots' backs. It's harder to hit people in the heads, right? And so you're just doing body shots, and it eats through your bullets way faster. So with a mouse and keyboard, this game is way better. I highly recommend, and it's cheaper, right? Like I just recommend if you're going to play this game, try to play it on a PC, not a console.
Yeah, absolutely. And the combat was repetitive in the fact that here comes another big area. There's different 4 items I can summon in here, and I'm going to engage these enemies that I'm away. However, the handymen, the big guys with the the thing, were always a challenge for me.
Oh yeah, those were the hardest
always
parts
a challenge.
of the game.
Crows, man, they're so easy with crows. Because they will sit there and swat at those crows for so long.
That's probably like one of the things I didn't
shoot
try.
their chest plate so easily.
Because that battle was always a challenge. If there was a handyman, I was like, oh, goodness, this is going to be a challenge for me.
The crows were such a trump card that it almost ruined the handyman's allure in the game, right? Because they're supposed to make it difficult. They're supposed to be mini-bosses. And they just felt like, well, I'm going to waste more bullets, but that's it.
I kind of wish I would have known that or tried that.
Speaking of things you wish you would have known, so on the first hour that you played, you tried to adjust the mouse sensitivity. Did you ever try to do it again?
When I got back to my place and played it, it was perfect because my mouse was actually set up for how I like it.
Gotcha. So you were using the left and rights, which went in like 5% increments or something like that. Whereas if you drag the slider, you actually can get.
Oh, well, I couldn't because I think maybe because it was in 4K, I couldn't see even like it was so close down to the end that I couldn't do it. But yeah, playing at my house, it was perfect. Okay. Yeah, so I didn't have a problem with that. That was just here at Klippers.
4K.
You have it set up how you like it.
It's true. I do.
With your little spaceship extra keyboard. And
hey, yeah, I'm one of weirdos. Use a space sideboard, whatever.
Totally valid.
So, as far as like gameplay, like yes, it was a little repetitive, but I love the fact that let's say you liked a particular weapon, you couldn't use that whole weapon the whole game because there was not enough ammo for it.
Yeah,
that was often the case, and I found myself. Like I would see there would be an achievement for a certain weapon and be like, okay, I'll switch to that and use that for a while and like get kills with that. And so, doing stuff like that did switch things up. So I guess good.
I liked how my favorite was the carbine, the semi-automatic carbine.
Yeah.
My favorite.
I never used that.
That was my favorite one out of all of it, right?
Really?
But there's never enough ammo for it.
Yeah.
So I'd use it for a while and be like, okay, I guess I'll use a shotgun now, or I guess I'll use.
Shotgun was my least favorite.
Yeah, but that's what I had.
Yeah.
There's a shotgun here and a bunch of shells. I guess I'm using a shotgun.
I liked the upgraded shotgun. Was it the heater? That was just like a single shot and it set them on fire also.
I never used the repeater. I never used the heater. I used the volley gun.
The heater was
a little
crazy.
bit,
Like
right?
It was
I used the
very
RPG
powerful.
a little bit, but other than that, it was like carbine, sniper rifle, pistol, machine gun. Right?
I was a little
You
disappointed.
mostly used machine guns.
I was a little disappointed with the gun upgrade system. You go to a vending machine and upgrade the gun. You didn't know you did it though. It just there's a little pip that moved on the interface of the vending machine. Your gun didn't look any different.
Sure.
By and large, it didn't act any different unless you got a clip upgrade or something, right?
Yeah.
But
Some of them did though. The burst fire one, that's like the upgraded one. If you upgraded the recoil on that, it was amazing.
oh really?
Yeah, I don't know if you tried that.
So in the Vox Populi
I upgraded no
Yes.
recoils
Yeah.
ever.
If you upgraded that one, I mean, it was all 3 shots like in the same exact spot.
nice.
Like
That'd be nice.
it was crazy. Yeah, so like you can't upgrade that until close to the end. But once I did, like I used that for the rest of the game. It was really powerful.
So if there was less combat, would you enjoy the game more? If it was more exposition, less combat, would you
Well,
enjoy it more?
maybe, but what I kept thinking of during this game was Wolfenstein, the newer Wolfensteins. That's like the gold standard, I think, for combat and stealth. combined.
I know you're going to guess what I'm going to say, but bought them, haven't played them.
Oh. I wasn't going to guess that, but that is your catchphrase.
Yes.
Wolfenstein, yeah, there is some stealth elements where you can sneak behind things. I think the only stealth element in this game completely was with the guys with the big ear thingies and the white light. That was the only stealth mechanic I found.
I never successfully did it, so I wasn't sure if it actually existed.
I think I did once. I think there was 3 of those guys.
Yeah.
And I think
and then little mini Patriots come and kill you, like little mini George Washingtons and all that come after you if they see you.
Yeah.
Why did they have the giant ear things, but they seem to be sight driven?
I wondered that. That was weird.
Well, so if
was it just that that was where the sound was coming out of?
No, so if you look at the giant ear guy, right? He's a completely solid object. Whereas if you look at the Patriots, for a while, they flicker in and out of dimensions. Mm-hmm. So my theory is that essentially she has roaming drones, because Elizabeth talks about the fact that she creates these. I realize we're jumping to the end. But she created these monsters, right? And so my guess is that creature, and when he does his siren stuff, you see dimensional ripples, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm guessing that she's imbued him with the power to do something with terrors just like she does, and it brings the drones into this dimension to be soldiers here and now, whereas they can phase in and out of multiple dimensions all the time. And my other guess is because they have masks, and they twitch around, they do weird things, bang their head, and you see when you kill someone in one dimension and not in the other dimension, they have that weird memory glitch. So my guess is that these are essentially dead people that are alive in some dimension and are being combined across dimensions to be her soldiers, her foot soldiers.
And speaking of going across dimensions, I love the mechanic of, your nose starts bleeding when your brain's trying to, like, reconnect.
Yeah.
And I love how Elizabeth would be like, Booker, you're bleeding. Like she was basically just snapping you back into reality with that one statement, which was fantastic.
Yeah. Though, okay, so on that front, again, this happens early on, but later on in the game is when you find out about it, right? So the Lutesses are the people that figured out the terror thing, right? Zachary Comstock funds them, and eventually it goes from communication into full-on opening tears with the machine, right? Jeremiah Fink helps create the machine. Zachary Comstock bankrolls it. The Lutesses are the brains behind it, right? So Rosalind Lutece brings Robert Lutece over, right? And that messes up his brain because he's the first person to travel across dimensions, right? Same thing happens to you when you cross a dimension. Your brain's all messed up. But Zachary Comstock goes into your dimension to get Anna and bring her back. Why doesn't that mess him up?
Or arguably, is he already messed up?
Maybe.
Based on his illusions of grandeur, is he already just...
And I guess he's been peering into the terrors more than like anybody else?
But it's also however many years has happened since that happened, right? Because he went back and got Elizabeth when she was a child, and so now she's however old she is.
Sure. But when you walk through, when Robert brings you through the terror, immediately you're messed up, right? And you're falling on the ground, and you're not able to keep things straight.
But I'm saying maybe that happened too with Comstock, and now he's gotten over it because so much time has passed.
But he was in your dimension carrying your baby, right? Like, that seemed weird to me. It's either he was there for a while, or I don't know. Or maybe that's part of what kind of drove him to be a crazy old bastard. I don't know.
It could be.
Yeah.
I did speaking of the lettuce couple.
Yes.
I did love the heads or tails dynamic of that game, where it's like you saw how many times they've done that experiment.
And it was always heads every time.
Now, what is your theory on every time you die? Does that Booker DeWitt story end and they just go grab a different one?
Possibly.
That was my theory. Is like every time you die in game. So did you ever die? You died in the game, right?
Very few times.
Were you playing on easy?
No, I left it whatever we set
Medium?
it at. I think on medium. I kept a count of it. It was like 4 or 5 times total. And Elizabeth always brings you back every time.
She brings you back, but you're fading in and out, and she flicks some syringe of something, plasmid maybe. I don't know what it is, right? And she kind of picks you up and brings you back into the reality.
Yeah.
Is that her just picking up your lifeless body and bringing you back? Or have you just fast-forwarded through everything you've already done and you are now a new Booker DeWitt facing that challenge?
It could be.
Could be, yeah. And as far as them bringing you there, I don't think that's the case. I think it's just them popping to a different timeline, right, where they're performing the exact same experiment over and over and over again, right, because they're phasing in and out of the different areas. Which, I also never understood until this playthrough, right? So, and maybe it's just because
That they were jumping around?
Yeah, and maybe it's because I missed the voxophone that explained it. It's surprising. So in the original BioShocks, voxophones were just texture, right? They weren't plot. In this one, there were several that were integral pieces of plot, right? And so one of them was this, is that Jeremiah Fink gets paid to kill the Lutesses, right? They're both in one universe now. Because they know about Elizabeth not being his real kid, and he doesn't want him to spill the beans. Jeremiah Fink can make it look like an accident, so he jerry-rigs the machine to kill him. But they don't actually die. Instead, it like splits them across all dimensions, and somehow they can travel back and forth. I never understood how they could do it. I just assumed it was that on the side they'd like made some different machine, or I didn't know what, right? And so I was like, oh, now that all makes sense, that they can phase in and out anywhere they want.
I love the aspect of thinking of, okay, is this a new Booker DeWitt or is this the same one? That's like what I love about the game, is there's so much like mind at play, you know. And I think that's what really made me love it, and still love it to this day. Even though I played it through again, and granted now this is my seventh playthrough, the combat I can start to see, it is a little dated graphically. The environments are beautiful, but you can really see it with the face textures and the NPCs. There was about 4 or 5 models that all look the same.
But it's cartoony enough that it's totally passable.
Yeah.
It looks like a style rather than a limitation.
Sure. Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's still, and I didn't knock it off my top pedestal. This is still my favorite single player of all game because of the moments. The moments that this game brings are just second to none. Like
when I think my favorite thing was when you first see Elizabeth and she opens up that first tear, and it's Tears for Fears playing and Return of the Jedi playing at the movie theater.
Not Return of the Jedi.
Revenge
of the Jedi.
Yes.
In French. Yeah.
Well, no, the alternate title of what it was going to be called, and then they changed the name.
But is that just what it is in French? I wonder.
No, it's that they specifically went for the name choice before they changed it. And it's the same with like there are a few other things like that where they would just tweak something a little bit, but I can't remember right now.
I don't know.
But yeah, that moment where they pulls into France and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, I wish they had done more of that. Like you didn't see. I guess see the real world in these other timelines.
Yeah,
the whole game takes place in Colombia.
Well, and it's super frustrating when you look through tears, like, things are not working right. And I assume it's because it got cut, right? So, like, that one, the Revenge of the Jedi, the bus comes at you and she has to close it, right?
Yeah.
In the elevator, she opens it and Songbird's there and comes at you, have to close it, right? But in, like, all the other tears that are floating around, you can hear things, but you can't see anybody, right? Like, you'll do a 360 looking through the tear, and it's just gray. And I got frustrated that I was like, hey, come on, let me see the window into this thing. That would be fun.
I wondered what was going on there, like why it was just an audio thing.
I loved I don't know. I get super nerdy about this game, but
you're allowed to.
The escape from the Monument Tower with Songbird in pursuit when you're on the skyhooks, like the music and
that part
the direction is just like, it's one of those things where I can just sit back and go, this is a beautiful piece of art.
Yeah,
like, gorgeous, right? Yeah. The other thing, a little gameplay mechanic that they snuck in there is when you're about to leave an area and you're definitely going to go to a new loading, Elizabeth would say, "Hey Booker, once we go back there, there's no turning back," which is just a subtle way to say we're going to a new map area and you can't backtrack here. Yeah. I thought it was a great way, instead of just having a pop-up that says you can't go this way. It was
right.
Hey Booker, you want to check out this first before we go? Like, hey, by the way, stupid, you're missing one of the new vigors. It's right over here.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, so much of the way that she interacted with the world, with you, and as a player, that was all very helpful and awesome. She flipped coins to you too many times, but
she flipped a coin to you too many times.
Yeah.
It was so many times. She'd be like, "Hey Booker, you want a coin?" "Yes." Stop. Animation. Throw it. 1 coin. I don't want 1 coin ever. If you're gonna give me 1 coin, don't take 10 seconds of my life.
And the whole, "Hey Booker, there's some lockpicks. Pick those up in case we need them." Grab them yourself.
Yeah.
You're the one who uses them anyway.
Or it was even more frustrating near the end of the game when your lockpicks were full, and it's like, I can't pick these up. Like,
I never got full. I lockpicked everything.
Well, so did I, and I was still like, a lot of times I would be full. Because almost every time you would go through a locked door, there would be a replacement in the room.
I got up to 30, I think was the max I ever had.
I think that is the max.
Okay, I only had that for a very short period of time.
Yeah.
It's just funny. It's like, make sure you grab the lockpick. Just grab it yourself. Yeah. You're right there. You're looking right at it. Or she'd say that, and I'm like, I couldn't find it. I'm like, where did you see this thing?
Well, and sometimes you couldn't pick it up. Like, she would say it, and you'd go over there, and you'd see a whole pack of lockpicks, and you couldn't pick it up.
That's if you were full.
Oh, okay. Maybe that makes more sense. I
Yeah.
was like, it's just broken. I can't get it. I just assumed it was broken because there was also areas where there would be money that you couldn't get to it, right? So like there was like one of those sky cars hanging down, and you duck down, you try to get under it, you can't get it. You try to go around it, you can't get it, but you could see money on the other side of it, just behind like a little cement barrier. I'm like, I can't get that. And it
There
ticked me off.
was a part like that where when the timeline switched, and if you went back to that part, you could walk through.
So when the
car
timeline
wasn't there
switched, I
anymore.
did go back and I tried to get
Oh,
that
really?
money, and I still couldn't get it.
Maybe it's.
I was like,
I'm thinking of them.
So the one I'm thinking of is outside of the Good Time Club, kind of off. So if you exit the Good Time Club, go off to
Is
the
that-
left over towards where there's that sky cars that you got to clear out to switch loading areas. Just before there, just outside of that building, there's a sky car. And there's like a cement barricade, and you could see the money behind the barricade, coins all over glowing, and you just can't get to
Huh.
it from any way.
I don't remember.
Anyway. But I'm a
Those
money
5
grabbing.
coins. You
I
gotta
know,
have those
I-
5 coins.
I love the variety of what people had in their pockets. Like, I'd kill a guy and it's like, there's a half-eaten sandwich. I'm like, well, better eat that.
Or in a pineapple.
He's got a pineapple.
Or
in his pocket.
cake and stuff. And I always love that I'm eating things off of a corpse. I just like,
Yeah.
Riddled with bullets.
yeah, it's like, oh, you bloody cake, my favorite.
Yeah, whatever.
Though the worst thing I ate was toilet potatoes. Did you guys see the toilet potatoes?
No, where were the toilet potatoes?
So it's in that place where Fink is auditioning you to become the new head of security, right?
Okay, I
Off of
like
there,
that part.
there's a bathroom with like really, really low res blurry flies flying
Yeah,
around.
yeah, I remember that.
And in that toilet, I'm like, oh, come on, people, you got to flush. Look, there's a turd in there. And I hover over it, and it's like, potato. I'm like, there's a potato in there? And so I flush. The potatoes don't disappear. So I was like, all right, YOLO. Toilet potato. Gave me health.
Gross.
Gave you help that made you all dizzy for a while.
It's not as bad as like the Duke Nukem Forever where you pick up a turd out of the toilet.
Yeah.
And eat it?
No.
Oh.
But it does give you like, I don't remember what they call them. Like, you get special experience points, but it has a name for like coolness points or something like that. I'm like, really?
'Cause-
Coolness points for picking up a turd?
Yep, poop.
Wow.
Good for Duke.
That was another moment in the game that I loved is the whole shantytown area where you're auditioning for jobs and you're basically like bidding lower like to do the job. You know, it's like, oh, I'll shovel whatever for like $8 for $8 or 8 silver eagles. You know, well, I'll do it for 7 in a certain time frame. It's like, wow, the times are so tough and the world is so brutal here. You're basically selling yourself short just to get money and to get by. Again, haves and have-nots in Columbia,
Yeah.
right?
Did you stick around to see who won the bid?
Mm-mm.
So the guy in green wins the bid, and so the other guy beats the crap out of him and says, sorry, I need the job.
Really?
Wow. How long does
Wow.
it take to get to that?
I don't know, 35, 40 seconds, maybe. But, yeah, so he beats the guy up, and the auctioneer's like, well, Jeremiah Fink loves an efficient man, right? And gives him the job.
Do you see how the job
Okay.
board changes as you switch dimension stuff? It all says
I didn't see
kill
that.
Booker do it, kill Booker do it, kill.
Oh,
It's like
really?
all of them say that on the job
Oh,
board.
crazy.
They're all kill Booker.
I thought that was a weak part of the story that the leader of the rebellion, is just like, you're an imposter, so all my men are going to try to kill you now. Like, it just seemed like she didn't give you any chance to explain yourself at all.
How would you explain it? Hey, I've been traveling in between dimensions.
Yeah, I don't know if you could, but there still should have been a chance to. Like, she was just very quick of, you're an imposter, you die.
At the same time, though, like, this is the race war, right? Like, she was killing everyone that was white, right? That's why everyone was fleeing
okay.
from Columbia,
Yeah.
right? Like, there was that lady that was stuck on the edge. She couldn't get to the ship. She's like, oh, I can't jump, right? I can't make it. And they're just citizens, and they're all fleeing, and it's because she says, no, you have to tear it up from the root, and you have to kill them all, right? Like, this is the upper class has to die.
Okay.
And so she would have killed everyone, including you and Slate, I'm sure, eventually, right? It's just that in that timeline, you happened to die before she
Yeah.
had the chance. Well, or not. Maybe she killed you. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give that a pass
I don't
then.
know.
But I love that kill Booker do it was like the job board. Everyone like, oh, hey, look at that.
That's interesting.
I like that. I like that arena where you were having your tryout for your job. I thought that was a great scene in the game.
Yeah.
I liked that part.
It's like, now
Yeah.
try
That
these
was-
guys on and try these guys on.
And it was a good way to have like varied type of enemies with some reason of plausibility, right? Like a lot of those arena areas in games, you're just like, okay, that was fun, but why? And yeah, that made sense. It's like Jeremiah Fink's like, oh, hey, I'm going to throw everything at you, and you're either going to die or you're going to then be my number one candidate to be the head of security.
Yeah. Good way to have a trial.
All right, so we're diving enough into the plot that
Yeah.
maybe I want to clear up the timeline. So again, we've got baptism is that split point where Zachary Comstock becomes a thing, Booker DeWitt becomes a thing, right? So you've got those two lines. Zachary Comstock invades Booker DeWitt's timeline to steal his daughter, well, to buy his daughter, and then Booker DeWitt invades Zachary Comstock's line to get his daughter back, right? And then eventually, the Vox Populi have your airship. You're only going to be able to get it if you help them. I thought that was maybe a little bit of a weak plot point rather than, okay, I'm just going to steal it from you because I kill everybody.
It's the same old, like, hey, we're just going to take your guns.
Yeah.
A lot of games do that. It's like, yeah, we're going to take all your guns now. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, thanks.
So I didn't love that part. But so you say, okay, we'll help you. We got to go to Chenlin to get the guns. Chenlin's dead. So then Elizabeth, who used to be called Anna, opens a tear into a new timeline where Chenlin's alive. Now, the difference, the split point there is who Chenlin marries. He marries Fink's head of security. So since he's got ins with the important people, he's let go instead of killed. So now you're in that timeline, so you got to get Chenlin's guns. So you go across, and turns out that his guns got confiscated. So you have to go into another timeline where they haven't been confiscated. So you switch to that timeline, and we don't know much about this timeline, but we know that Elizabeth got moved immediately. She wasn't in the tower when Booker arrived. So Booker, for some reason, says, oh, well, I guess I'll just hang out here. I'll hook up with Slate and go try to take out Comstock because I hate that guy. And then he joins forces with the Vox Populi. I guess the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? And the Vox Populi have a huge rebellion, and somehow Booker dies. So
Martyr, right?
When you get into this timeline, you just know that a rebellion's in full sway. There's a genocide going on. The Vox have taken over, and you apparently existed in that timeline and are now a martyr. But then you jump again because Elizabeth gets captured by Songbird. Well, she chooses to get captured by Songbird to save you.
Right.
And you go to rescue her, and then suddenly you realize that a bunch of time's passed, and it's because the Elizabeth from that timeline knew that you were going to fail to rescue her because you had in her timeline. And so instead, she pulls you from that time to that same future where you had already failed, and she's now an old woman that's doing all the horrible things that Zachary Comstock prophesied, right? And then she gives you some information so that you can go back into another timeline, a different timeline, and save Anne Elizabeth. And for me, at least, that was a little bit dissatisfying because now you realize, oh, of these infinite worlds, I'm saving one of them. But that gets resolved in the end a little bit. So now after she gives you this, she throws you back to 1912 into a different world where Elizabeth's just been captured by Songbird. And from there, you're able to go and rescue her before you go into the wrap-up timeline, which I'm not going to talk about now.
See, I want to say I was really worried when you were in that timeline with old Elizabeth. I was really worried that she was going to be the end villain of the game.
Yeah, I wondered.
I got really worried leading up to that moment because it felt like it was getting towards the end of the game. I knew I'd been playing for quite a while at that point, and I was just like, if they make her the bad guy of this, I don't know how I'm going to like that. This is getting weird.
That would be an interesting conundrum, but it could also be resolved in the fact that there are many worlds. You just killed one villain, Elizabeth, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I was happy that wasn't the case.
Which was fun to listen to her voxophones when you were trying to lead up to that point, and you were hearing evil Elizabeth's voxophones. Yeah. That was setting the stage for that. I'm like, oh my goodness, they are going to do this.
Yeah. Where she became the next prophet. She's ruling with just as much of an iron fist. But it was interesting because they did also show that there was still that doubt, right? She talks about the fact that, he was the false shepherd. I ran from the prophet's embrace, but it turns out that he was right. Booker DeWitt was a false shepherd. But then at the end of that same voxophone, she says, because when the wolves came, he was nowhere to be found and he'd abandoned me. Right? You're like,
yeah.
So that shows the cognitive dissonance that she's under, right? That she's calling him a false shepherd, but at the same time, she wanted him to save her from the wolves.
Right.
So she knows now she's in the pack of wolves.
Yeah.
Wolfpack. Just like Zach Galifianakis. I love Wolfpack, but now I have 4 in my Wolfpack.
So getting towards the end of the game and you've kind of resolved all that. Now you're going up to Comstock's airship, right? Mm-hmm. And you face Comstock for the first time. Did you notice before you go into that room, it has panels of the events of what's taken place in the game already? You're in that room.
The stained glass windows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see little panels of the events that have already taken place in the game. As you walk through, I thought meeting Comstock for the first time and the last time was a little anticlimactic. It was just kind of
dead.
It
is a very quick moment.
There was no, and and you don't know at that point that that's you. Like, you just killed yourself, right? You don't know that yet. I wish they would have played that up a little bit more and just kind of... would have been a bit more satisfying.
Yeah. I mean...
Because your last battle, your last conflict is with the Vox, mostly.
Yeah.
They're evil airships, and they've got all of the Patriot technology now.
I want to say, too, about that moment, I thought for sure there was going to be a big battle with Songbird. That the game was leading up towards that, especially since Songbird seemed to kind of be taking the role of the big daddies from BioShock 1.
Yeah. Which is exactly what the role was, because in the extended lore, that's where they got the idea.
Yeah. Well, in the Voxophone, he was collaborating with Rapture to make both the Handyman and Songbird.
Okay, great. Yeah. So, thinking that the whole entire time, that this is leading up to a big battle, and was kind of like, oh, this is probably going to be an annoying battle because I'm not really enjoying the combat that much. And so I was like, this is great when he turns out to be an ally and you can use him to attack the airships and stuff. That part was great.
See, I felt the other way. Like, I loved the airship battle. I loved, just being barraged with people that I was killing and shooting and ducking behind things and hopping on the skyline. But I felt like Songbird just timing out and me pointing and saying die to a whole bunch of airships over and over again. I was like, that's lame.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a big finish. But then after that, I thought it was a nice big finish. But I didn't like that. I didn't like that part of the battle. Now all the Patriots that kept flooding the deck that you'd have to take out, I thought that was a good piece of the battle, but I didn't love the Songbird mechanic. I felt it was Deus Ex Machina, like literally, right? Here's the machine coming to save the day, right?
Yeah. I tried to do it without using Songbird. I failed.
You can't,
it's too hard.
Yeah.
Like, and there's...
Oh, because the Zeppelins have like huge
Well,
guns.
it won't finish until the Zeppelins are dead. Right?
Yeah,
okay.
And so you have to use Songbird for those. I tried shooting rockets at him. I tried a bunch of stuff. I'm like, no, you got a Songbird. I did like how they were attacking the airship itself and not necessarily you.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a defend the airship, defend the core type thing.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun. But yeah, I liked using Songbird just because it's like, hey, you've been my enemy. Maybe you were just misunderstood this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that twist in his plot.
Though I will say, so Elizabeth figures out the code that old Elizabeth gave her to control Songbird, right? CAGE. It's,
Oh, yeah.
It's Cage is musical notes, CAGNE. And then she, beats up the machine to get the little flute thing, and then she hands it to Booker DeWitt, who apparently is a musical savant and can play CAGE on a new instrument that he's never played before ever.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Let's just assume that in his timeline, when he was really depressed, he went all out in music.
At the Battle of Wounded Knee, he had the CAGE.
He was a harmonica player.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
Which they never actually told him of the atrocities he did at Wounded Knee. His buddy Cage, or not Cage, Slate, sorry. Slate said, I know the things you did at Wounded Knee, but they never tell you what they were. We're assuming they're horrible.
Yeah.
And basically he's trying to atone for all those mistakes through his story. Now, is this story the redemption story of Booker DeWitt?
In a way. But it's almost like the world is better off without me in it, is what it ends up being.
I mean, I feel like that's asking, is Inception about him reuniting with his kids, right? It's not about anything. It's about making you think and you question, reality in general, right? It's like, so whether or not Booker DeWitt has been redeemed, that's a question you're going to have. You're going to have a question about, how is this all possible? You're going to have a question about, how timelines could potentially converge. But yes, I mean, that is definitely one of the themes is redemption through self-sacrifice, right? And Elizabeth also self-sacrifices, right? She pushes you into the ending, which eliminates her as well. Which
is interesting because Booker's front and center on the box art, right? This story is not about Booker DeWitt.
Yeah.
At all. You are basically the vessel that lets these things happen, but you could replace him with anyone else, and the story would have been easy. It would have been like rescuing Elizabeth without Booker DeWitt is easy peasy. You rescue the girl and you're done.
Yeah, I guess.
Like it's fun to, for once, I loved being a character where I'm not a hero. I'm not even an anti-hero. I'm just a dude trying to do a job, and I don't know why I'm doing it. I think a lot of games get way too caught up in that. Well, you're the good guy, and you're gonna do the good thing for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Or you're the anti-hero. You're the Deadpool. You're the making the funny jokes about doing this thing that you really don't want to do anyway. You're just a dude who's kind of messed up his life. Who's said, "Here's my last chance," to figure something out.
So on that front, did you kill Slate or did you not kill Slate?
I didn't.
So you spared Slate?
Killed him.
So I spared Slate originally but then you meet Slade again if you peek in
When
all the side
he's
rooms.
captured?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Did you kill him then?
No, I left him. Yeah.
So I killed him then. That's interesting. So between the three of us, we did like each of the possibilities.
That's funny.
So yeah, I killed him in that room, and she goes, oh, "Well, I guess that's what he would have wanted." And you leave. Like,
I can't remember what happens when you leave him. I think you're basically leaving him, and like they're gonna treat him worse than I am. So this is actually more of a punishment.
See, that's what I thought is like this is a piece of mercy because he's gonna get caught up in the Vox Populi. Things are gonna go horrible for him. I'll just go ahead and end the story now for him.
so when you go through all the jail cells, he's just not there, or is it because you're in a new timeline? He is now there. Still?
I think I can't remember now.
Okay. So I killed him in the jail cell, and then you go through another tear, and you come back, and he's alive again.
Oh, really?
And I tried to kill him, and you can't. I shot him a bunch of times.
Is his mind messed up? Or?
He doesn't say anything. He's just like,
Really?
it's almost like he's asleep. And so I didn't know if that was because I killed him in one and he was alive in the other and he was like messed up. But he just was sitting there breathing, and I shot him a bunch, couldn't kill him. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Huh.
So is there anything else about the gameplay we want to touch on before we kind of get into the last?
Sure.
There were some things I wanted to ask.
Yeah. Okay.
Her necklace that you have to choose which necklace she wears for the game. Does that have any impact on anything?
No.
Okay. That was what I wondered.
I did Bird first time, Cage second time.
I think I did Cage. But I wondered if that was actually affecting anything.
I guess I must have hit the wrong button because I swear I did Cage. And I swear they said Cage. I think it broke. But then for the rest of the game, she was wearing the bird.
Oh,
so I was like,
She had the cage on for me the whole time.
I think
Yeah,
that broke.
she had Cage on.
Okay.
There was that. In the Zeppelin, in Comstock's study, there on his chalkboard, he has like a timeline thing mapped out.
Oh, yeah. I didn't notice.
And I wondered later on, when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is probably just the timeline of the game. But later on, I wondered when you're going through all the different worlds and you're seeing all the different lighthouses and stuff, and there's different paths that you can walk. I wondered if that was a map for the paths, that if you take it a certain way, it leads to something.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
I should have looked it up, but I didn't.
I was curious if you could even take different paths. I was at that point, I was just kind of booking it to get to the ending, and so I didn't try to like push in different directions. I just went to wherever. My guess was, though, how linear the story was, that it would all go to the same place.
I'm sure, yeah. I would, unless there was just like one secret, like Easter egg one or something like that.
And there could be, because there were Easter eggs in the game, right? So
coming to the end of the game, did you see that final moment where you are Comstock? Was that a surprise to you?
I knew the whole game that Elizabeth was your daughter.
How?
That had been spoiled for me years ago somehow.
Okay.
So I knew that going in. Most of the game, I wondered if you were Comstock. And then one of the audio logs like threw me off of that. Like I was like, oh, for sure he's not.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And so then I stopped thinking that for the rest of the game until the end. And then I was like, oh, he was? Like, and it was like kind of confusing.
I had the same thing. I remember the first time I played through it, I was like, are you Comstock? And this is different timelines, right? But then I was like, no, because I was like, well, he's an old man, but it could be different timelines. But then like Wounded Knee kept lining up and things like that. I'm like, no, it can't be. We have to be a
like I
different
felt
dude.
like it was proving that it wasn't true. So that was, I guess, kind of a surprise. I'm trying to think. It seemed like there were some other twists. So even though I knew Elizabeth was your daughter, there were still enough twists in the game, and I didn't know like anything else about what the game was about, that it was still surprising enough that I still really enjoyed the story.
I somehow avoided all spoilers because I didn't play it too long ago, honestly. Like maybe 3 years ago was the first time I played it. And the second she comes to that tear and it cuts her pinky, I went, oh my goodness, Elizabeth's Anna.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
That blew my mind.
And then at the end when I'm like, and then that last scene, I'm like, I'm Comstock. It was one of the, and I think that's why it made me love it so much is a game that completely fooled me. And that doesn't happen a lot. But this one totally had me, fooled.
Because you haven't played BioShock 1, right?
Not all the way through.
Because have you?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think also having played that, I knew there was going to be a big twist at the end because that's what BioShock 1 does. So.
Yeah, the BioShock games all have big twists.
I really like BioShock 1's twist, but
I think the twist on 2 is good too. A lot of people hated it because it's not very satisfying.
Really?
But I think it's a great twist.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to add before we talk about the very final ending of the game?
There's some little pieces. I mean, music covers, awesome.
Oh, yes. Music in the game is
Tomorrow's
awesome.
music today.
Yeah.
Comstock was just ripping off songs from the future.
Yeah, girls just want to have fun.
Fantastic.
That has been popping into my mind here and there, like, since I finished the game. Like, the fairground version of Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
And when you land on Battleground Beach, I was going... I swear I know that song.
I didn't notice what it was on Battleground Beach.
That's when Girls Just Want to Have Fun is playing.
It's on Battleground Beach or Battleground Bay or
It was like
Battleship
monkey
Bay,
whining an accordion version of it, right? Okay, I did notice that.
And it runs like Disney will have at the theme parks. They'll have these like fun, happy little versions of songs. I'm like, oh, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
The one when you're, it's right outside the gardens where her mom is buried. There's the house that's kind of floating. That's actually the composer's house.
Okay, yeah.
It took me forever to figure out what song it was, and I was like, oh, it's Tears for Fears. Like, it's the one that you saw in Elizabeth's Terror at the beginning, but it's just, the music is completely different. It's just those lyrics.
There was a moment where the song Tainted Love is playing on a jukebox, right?
Oh, I didn't notice that one.
And I decided that in my playthrough, I was going to put in, the picture from Soft Cell. And as I went to the internet, I had like a major Mandela effect moment. Apparently, Soft Cell didn't write that song.
Really?
They covered it. It was from the 60s, from Gloria Jones, she didn't write it, but she performed it first, right? And they'd written it in the 60s, and then they covered it in the 80s, granted, with their own flair, right? And that's when it took off. Blew my mind, because I was like, I now can't put that picture I was going to put in there. Yeah. Felt like I was in an alternate timeline.
I feel like that happens often, though, where you're like, oh, I love that song. That's a cover, What?
Yeah, I had no clue.
Yeah.
I just loved how the game kept throwing in these like things where there was like these little hints of you've done this before, or there's a multiple like when you first drink the enhancement to give you your shield, it's like, oh, I didn't kill him. Okay. Implying that the other times you've attempted this, it had killed me.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible, right? Because especially if they were experimenting.
Absolutely.
Right. At some point they figured it out, but now they just joke about it.
It's like, I thought I'd kill him. Nope.
Yeah. The other fun thing, there was an Easter egg where there's one number code in the game, right? That you have to punch in a number code to get the lock, and the number is 0451, which is in all of Irrational Games and their previous names games, which is a reference both to their office number from way back when, and also to Fahrenheit 451.
So, okay.
Interesting.
Kind of a fun one. Another fun one was that, I guess we didn't talk about this, but Daisy Fitzroy kills Jeremiah Fink in front of you, right? And then she's going to kill Jeremiah Fink's son because she's going to, tear it up from the root and kill
I didn't
everybody.
get that was his son. I thought it was just another kid.
No, that's his son.
Oh, okay.
And Elizabeth's like, no, we can't let him do it, right? And you boost her up, and she goes through a vent. Just like the little sisters in the Big Daddies, they would always scramble up and through the vents to get to different areas, right? So that was kind of a fun little parallel, right? It might not have even been on purpose, but it's a fun little parallel at least.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Plasmid Vigor collaboration, the Big Daddy Handyman collaboration, those being similar things.
And you see Rapture.
I
didn't expect that.
Yeah, it was great. I had forgotten that you go to Rapture.
Yep.
Yeah.
He makes the dumb little joke. A city under the ocean.
Yeah,
give me a break. Yeah. Or whatever he says.
Though, I was surprised how well they had made you like Songbird, right? It wasn't just that it was an ally at the end, right? But you'd had that whole backstory of, this was my only friend. And again, that parallel to the Big Daddies and the Little Sisters, right? Like, as much as the Big Daddies are this terrifying creature that you're going to kill, they were protecting the Little Sisters, and you kind of feel bad about it, right? Whereas Songbird, now he's dying under the ocean, killed by effectively his little sister, right? Drowning him, and he can see her right face to face. It just felt cruel and painful.
It was a very impactful game. Another moment that sticks with you.
Yep.
I think that's if my one takeaway from this whole experience is this is a game that will stick with you for the rest of your life. You will remember these moments in games forever.
Yeah.
Like I'll never forget some of these, and especially the final scene where Booker DeWitt succumbs to his fate and is drowned by Elizabeth. It's one of those things where I just push my back from my PC and just go, wow.
Yeah. Which kills her because now he hasn't. Yeah.
Okay, before we dive into the end, one more Easter egg. And this one blows my mind. So, Songbird is dying, right? And screeches in a certain way. Go back to BioShock 1, and there's a piano player playing some tune, right? And in the background, you hear that screech from Songbird.
Really? And they didn't put it in after the fact?
No.
What was it supposed to be originally?
Unclear. You don't know what it is. It's just some weird noise that's happening outside in the water, right? Like, no reason. And so I wonder if I don't know, I couldn't find anywhere that can confirm this, but maybe the developers based Songbird's entire sound off of that one Easter egg that they wanted to tie into.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
The level of detail and the level of work that went into this game probably makes me makes me love it.
It's super impressive. I love when developers have the time to do that. It's sad that things got cut and that it wasn't everything it could have been, but I think it's still a great game, and they didn't cut the corners that ruin the game.
Right.
Yeah.
They cut some that made it less enjoyable.
I should say too that the combat did frustrate me and annoy me. The story's good enough that it kept me playing, and combat is never bad. I would say it's just a
little repetitive.
Yeah, tedious.
It's fair.
But I could have turned the difficulty down and gone through it even faster, I guess, if I was really having a problem with it.
Yeah.
And I guess there's two more critiques that I want to levy before we get into the ending, because the ending I think will consume the rest of the time. But so the first of all is that I didn't like that Elizabeth's powers were only explained in one tiny voxophone that was optional, right? Mm-hmm. Now, that voxophone I think was enough to say, hey, her pinky being in two places is why she can open tears, which is totally different than anybody else. But, I didn't hear that voxophone the first time I played the game. And so it was just weird. That I was like, why does she have powers? It doesn't make sense. So it does explain it, but in that one little niche area, I would have liked that to have been forced upon you, maybe.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, what the hell was up with Lady Comstock as a ghost?
The footprints part?
Well, and just her being a ghost. What? Why was she a ghost? She died, but in a different universe.
Somehow Elizabeth's power was used to raise her in this as this siren, so to speak. I don't know why, but that was. I honestly think it was a character model they made. They're like, well, we better use this.
And she's like a necromancer ghost too, right? Well, she raises the dead bodies that you killed before.
It looked like the possession vigor, kind of.
Oh, I guess that's true.
A little bit.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
And and you know the where you get the crow vigors, the guys that have the
coffins on their back.
Those are the ones that are eternally mourning Lady Comstock.
Yeah.
That's where they come from.
Oh, okay.
It's like having a cross on your chest for Jesus, right? This is a coffin on your back for Lady Comstock. Right? You're memorializing her death.
Great.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. Oh, and the Ravens. I guess we didn't talk about the Order of the Raven, right? That's trying. So the Order of the Raven, John Wilkes Booth, right? Founded the Order of the Raven, apparently.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you go in and there's that
big statue of him.
And if you look on the walls, there's a few different pictures of people that don't have names, but one of them looks a lot like Martin Van Buren.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if they're being okay, you got the founders, but then you've got the split off of the other founders, and somehow was relegated to that. So I don't know what the lore there would be, but it was interesting.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
So were you shocked when you saw Rapture?
I had forgotten.
Yeah,
from the last playthrough.
I definitely didn't expect to see it, because this felt like a standalone game the entire time.
Yeah, you see that and it just snaps you into oh my goodness, here's all the parallels that I've been missing or ignoring or not cluing in on. So was the ending satisfying to you?
That's not the word I would use. No.
I was fine with it. It definitely makes you think, I guess.
I was at peace with it because I'm you're atoning for the horrible things you've done.
And they do explain it to you well that, one of the Elizabeth says, well, you're in my reality, you're Booker DeWitt. And, well, in mine, you're Comstock. In mine, you're Comstock. In mine, you're Booker DeWitt. There's too many to ever save, basically.
Yeah.
The only way to redeem yourself is to atone for what you've done.
Yeah. And, you have to stop right now before you get baptized.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't know what word I would use. I wouldn't use satisfied. Because it's not So at the end of the day, you did not save Elizabeth. No. You killed her. You prevented a fate worse than death. But you killed her. Right? She does not exist. You don't exist.
Yeah.
But she does not exist either.
Doesn't she, though? Does the fact that she's split up off and has this power to go between things, does that save her?
I do not.
They all disappear.
And you've got those final notes where they disappear, right? I believe that she's gone.
Yeah.
She does not exist. Interestingly enough, it makes you wonder what happens to the Lutesses, right? Because essentially the only reason the Lutesses ever got killed and got together was because of Zachary Comstock. And so if he doesn't exist, that doesn't happen either, potentially. But satisfying is not it. It makes you think for sure. but it's not a happy ending, and it's not.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even call it a redemptive ending. It's just a resignation, maybe, is what it is, right? I don't know.
Well, I'm so used to in games where you have the hero either ride off into the sunset and who knows what happened, or they die saving everyone. Like I think Master Chief, does that. Or no, Master Chief gets flown over in a spaceship or whatever, and it says, "Call me if you need me."
I don't remember what happens in the first one.
But in a lot of those games, you either sacrifice yourself, and it's a very glorious hero sacrifice.
Yeah.
This one is just like, well,
yeah, you're not saving the world; you're just preventing it from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fine. I love the ending. I wouldn't use the term.
Yeah, I was just like, yep, I get it. This is it. Yeah, I don't know. I liked it.
I enjoyed it.
So, as always, we like to answer this question: is it worth playing?
Absolutely.
I think it depends on what you like. If you like story, if you like plot, if you like, having to play with difficult ideas, absolutely. If you are just a hardcore FPS gamer and you want a great FPS experience, this is not.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I don't know.
So what you're both trying to say is you're wrong. Yes, you should play this game because it is the best game ever made.
See, I wouldn't go that far, but it is great.
Yeah.
Really
No, I mean, like, if it had RPG elements, that would extend who I would recommend it to, right? If it had...
You could upgrade your
better
guns and your
shooting
vigors.
mechanics, a little bit, right? And there was the clothing, which is a little bit,
It dipped
right?
the toe in the
It
RPG
did.
world.
Yeah.
If it had, more of, stealth or cover or different styles of combat, I would recommend it more to the FPS crowd, right? But as it is primarily a story-driven... If you like story-driven games, this is your cup of tea.
Yeah.
Which I do.
I do too.
Same.
So, on that note, we've not butchered, but we've discussed this at length. What is the next
Worth
game?
of it.
Oh, yeah.
So, Dr. Lutece is voiced by Jennifer Hale.
Oh.
I don't know if you guys knew this.
I did not.
Jennifer Hale voices Commander Shepard from Mass Effect.
Here comes Mass Effect.
If you play female Shepard in Mass Effect.
Okay, Cynic, is now the time that we resign ourselves to play Mass Effect.
I'm excited to play Mass Effect. I don't know why you're worried about it.
Because, okay.
I bought those games ages ago and have been champing at the bit to try to play them.
I've never even installed it. I also bought it. I was a bit concerned because we were discussing we were discussing what we're going to play next a little bit. And we were kind of tossing around the ideas, and Frosty said, "Well, let me get you a quick start guide for this game." It was 14 pages.
It was longer than I expected it
I
to be.
appreciated it.
No, I do appreciate it. Like, I'm not looking at gift Frost in the mouth, but
I felt really bad when I was like, it's 15 pages. I can't
I
give this
think
to
it's
them.
really good to avoid those pitfalls that could make someone just hate a game if you didn't realize there's a pitfall.
Yes, especially the weapon thing, which
Yeah.
we'll probably end up talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I'm jazzed to play it because it's an entire trilogy of games that I've really wanted to play and just have never gotten to.
and I'd really like to get back to games that we haven't played yet,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
this one we had to show you this because it is the best game that's ever made.
Oh, and I appreciate it. I never would have played this otherwise.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I would have had any interest because I dislike BioShock 1 so much. And it's just like old now that it's just like, I'm just going to play
But it was
whatever.
worth the story.
Oh, for sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love
I
BioShock
was very
1.
glad that we played this.
But I'm also a sucker for Art Deco. Like, Art Deco, as much as I love the BioShock Infinite aesthetic, I really missed the Art Deco. I love
Really?
just that weird, bizarre mishmash of, like, 50s and 60s. It was fun.
So
Okay.
I don't even know what Mass Effect is. That sci-fi?
Sci-fi.
It's sci-fi.
Okay,
Yes.
I was like, is it like?
Sci-fi RPG, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, based
The
on
first one
15
especially
pages, it
is-
better be an RPG.
yeah,
Because if there's
it's-
15
it's
pages
very-
say how to do with combat,
It's very RPG heavy.
is it turn-based?
It's a match
No.
3.
Well,
It's a match
there's-
3.
you play all the combat in real time. Optionally, you can pause the combat and tell your people to do stuff, but you don't have to.
Okay.
Okay.
No. Yeah, I don't love
can-
the turn-based ones as much. I'm
Yeah.
willing to do it sometimes. Like, I remember Knights of the Old Republic had a little bit of that.
So yeah, BioWare
yes.
BioWare made that, and then LucasArts took the Star Wars license away from them, and so they said we still want to make a science fiction game, and so they made Mass Effect.
So the same team that made KOTOR made this?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm all in. Let's
Yeah.
do this.
Well, I'm excited to hear who this Frank, Bob, Jim Shepard is.
You can name him the first name, whatever you wish.
Is it always Shepard, though?
Yeah.
I don't want my last name to be Shepard.
Well, that's how people refer to you. So
Can I be
that's
Shepard
fine.
Shepard?
You can.
Just call him Dip Shepherd.
So anyway,
Right.
thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah.
If you haven't picked up Mass Effect.
Or
Mass Effect 1.
Go ahead and start playing it with us. We're
Yeah.
gonna all dive in. Cynic will do his fantastic long play videos, and we'll look silly not doing as much content as he
No,
does.
we'll see. I definitely dug myself an editing hole, so I got to dig my way out of that. But
You can definitely do less and still be great.
I'm enjoying it, and I'm learning. I haven't done video editing before. This has been a blast for me. So dream come true. That's what pushing 40-bit is.
Awesome.
Dreams come true.
Kids, remember that, if anything.
If your dream is to play video games, you too can succeed.
Because it really doesn't cost much to start a YouTube channel. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you.
Bye.
Cheers.